Here we are. So you have arrived for a divine appointment. You have arrived for the last Sunday in a series based on the book Living Untethered by Michael Singer. Now you might think, oh, disappointment, the last day of a series, I missed out, or I'm not going to get it where they are. Oh, you will, don't worry, and this is the greatest gift this day. Because if you choose to pick up this book, get ready. It is one of the best books I have picked up in a long time. And I have to say, because a lot of it, right, is about the practice and about craving and aversion. And I have to say I've been dealing with my aversion to letting go of the book. Like I want it to keep going. I'm like, no, I don't want it to be over. So next Sunday, we have an opportunity to come together for an interesting type of service. If you have been studying the book or you've heard something in any of the talks that you have a question about, feel free to email that question to the office. Just email it to unityvillagechapel@gmail.com, and we will get it up here on stage next Sunday. Reverend Brenda, who is one of our Zoom room hosts, will be in town with us next Sunday, and we will be going through those questions. We'll be doing a sermon, a talk based on your questions. So if there are any parts that you struggled with, or if you thought, oh, that's not unity, or what is this? What do I do with this piece? Or this piece is where I get stuck, or I'm not sure about that, then go ahead and bring us your questions, bring us your thoughts. And if you have a story about transformation or about a new sense of peace that has come over you, or about any way that you've practically used this in your life, please just write that story up for us as well and let us know, and we might have the opportunity to share that tomorrow so that it can be a gift to other people, because I know some of you have shared your stories with me, and I am just getting to hear some of the most amazing stories, and it does help us, and it helps each other to get to hear those stories. So here we go. This week in the book Living Untethered, we are talking about living a life of acceptance. Living a life of acceptance. And the idea goes into one that he has looked at much of this book, and it's a question that he likes to ask us, which is, what are you conscious of? What are you conscious of? And diving into the question of what we're conscious of in each moment, we can begin looking at what has our attention and what has our focus. He talks about midlife crisis, and he says that it's funny that actually more of us don't have them, because about halfway through life, we begin to look at life and go, either it's not working like this, or I don't want to keep doing it in this way. There are things I don't want to repeat for the next half of my life. And if we really do that sincerely, then we take a deep dive into spiritual transformation when we get that. He talks about how we're spinning on the planet, on this earth, in dark space, and how really, in truth, we've won the lottery. The fact that we're here, in this moment, in this time and space, we've won the lottery. I think it was Captain Kirk. I was reading an article recently, and I think, his real name's not Captain Kirk, but you know who I'm talking about, Captain Kirk? I just know him as Captain Kirk. He went into space, I believe. Have you read this, right? And he went into space, and he was expecting, think about it, from his job. He's like, we're doing it, baby. And he expected to just be thrilled and mesmerized and delighted. And he went into space, and as he's moving away from this green and blue ball, this sweet little marble, it gets tinier and tinier and tinier. And it goes into the abyss of what is space, the darkness. And he said it was an interesting experience. And in his own way, he expressed that it was actually kind of depressing, kind of sad. It was kind of a letdown, because he realized, looking back on the earth and coming back home, how very, very precious this time is. How very, very precious this planet is. That in fact, being out there gave him an expanded sense of how absolutely sacred it is to be right here. Like we're held onto the planet by our feet, like that little thing called gravity. I mean, like, look at it. Just do that with your foot. Plops right back down. Your food spoons right into your mouth. It doesn't float off. There's oxygen to breathe, clean air. And it gave him an experience that was unexpected about appreciating the here and now. And that's the practice, isn't it? The practice is waking us up. The practice is about letting go of all of the things that keep us from thinking that this right here, right now is a holy moment. And boy, is there a plethora of stuff that can do that. There is so much that can do that. One of the parts that I like from what he wrote is this. He said, "You had a brilliant idea for a hobby. Let's collect bad experiences." That's what you did. I'm going to collect every bad experience I ever had and keep it inside me so it can bother me for the rest of my life. He says, how can that work out well? If you keep doing it, you're going to collect more and more bad experiences, and your life will get heavier and heavier. That's ordinary, friends. If you've ever sat with someone during hospice time at their bedside, you know there can be a release. There's a slowing down. There's a letting go. And there's also a sweetness. There's a breathing into what's really important. And what do people always say? Oh, but I didn't say this or do this. I mean, all of us do it. If I had just gone one more time, if I just said one more thing. But what did we do with that one moment, that one piece of time? Probably something that we didn't want to birth, to share, to spread. But the separate self, the ego self, whatever you want to call it, that rascally little part of ourselves that just goes on living life but is not conscious, it needs attention, it needs space, it needs time, and it needs commitment to grow. Because when we go about these patterns and habits that don't serve us and don't serve the planet and don't serve the world, don't serve God, we begin to create neural pathways. We begin to trample on paths and make tracks and make roads. And every time we do it, it becomes easier to go upon those roads. Unless we override it with the spiritual practice, which is ours to do. For each one of us, we have that power. Charles Fillmore called it the power of will. And he said the will has to be balanced with understanding. Those two go together. The power of will with the power of understanding. If you have the power of will without understanding, you start pressing forward. Boy, do we have the ability as humans to press forward, don't we? To create, to move energies, to make things happen. But if we engage that without the balance of understanding, swirling in wisdom, then we go off track. But we don't need to live like that. The problem is, in the normal sense, in the human condition, we're often drowning. And Michael Singer talks about what happens when someone's drowning. When someone's drowning, what do? They start grasping for something, grasping for anything. So when life gets uncomfortable, when something's hitting our blockages or all those things we've added into our lives, all those hard experiences we've stored, all of those injuries, all of that separation, any pain, and we are uncomfortable with it, we do one of two things. We either try to push it away or we try to grab onto something that's going to help us. Has anyone ever been something that someone else grabbed on so they don't sink, grabbed onto, right? How does that feel? When you're the buoy, right? But that's the human condition. Because if we grab onto something, we think, I'm okay now. I got this love, or I got this job, or I got this bank account, this money, this inheritance, this whatever it is, you fill in the blank. I got this green light on my health, whatever it is. I got this now so I can live. But then the world has a funny way of changing, doesn't it? What it always does, change, change, change. And then something else comes at you, or someone leaves, or someone disappoints you, or you lose something, whatever it is, life happens, and you have a sense of not being okay again. So there's the clinging on to something, or there's the pushing something away. And there are a lot of ways to push something away. It's like, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to see you, I don't want to feel you. And what we tend to do is we tend to move towards other things that numb us. That may be drugs, that may be alcohol, that may be relationships, that may be any sort of addiction. Fill in the blank. It may be the television set. It may be the news. Whatever it is. It's perfectly designed for your awakening. And the funny thing about awakening, the funny thing about enlightenment, is that it's the opposite of the addiction stuff. With addiction, you have to keep getting more in order to feel better, right? Like the first time you have a love addiction or a substance addiction or a TV addiction, whatever it is. We use that word lightly because it's just part of the human condition. The first time, it's like, just a little bit satiated me. Just a little bit got me back to feeling okay. But then you need more and more and more. It's like someone with adrenaline rushes in extreme sports. It's like it was fine just walking on the edge of this stage when you were 2, but now you want to walk up there. And only by walking up there do you feel like, I'm free, I'm doing it, I'm being bold. That's how it is when we dive into things that we need to release our, what Michael Singer calls our samskaras, our blockages, our things that need to be released, or things that are no longer serving our highest purpose, things that need to be healed. And so we have to do more and more and more. But the spiritual practice is the opposite. When we are engaging in the spiritual practice and when we open up the blockages and we open up the flow of life, that river of life, that energy, which he calls Shakti, was when it moves through us, when we feel it more and more, we actually need less to make us feel more aware. Like it used to be, it took something, right? Like it took the birth of a child for us to have 48 hours on the clouds, right? Maybe it takes a first kiss, maybe it takes a wedding, whatever it is, before we feel that, oh, yes, I'm grateful. I am grateful. But it's the opposite with the spiritual practice. We don't need more and more to make us feel that. When we're engaging in awakening and we're engaging the spiritual practice, it can be just a little snippet of music that sends us to the clouds. It can just be an interaction with someone in our daily life, driving in a car or at a store, whatever it is. It can just be a moment where we witness something and all of a sudden, we are high in the spirit. It takes less and less to get there. And eventually, as he goes into the last section, eventually we begin to live there. Once we have removed so many of the blockages, and he says, start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with the stuff you're really aware of. Like, who doesn't get bothered by driving on the road sometimes? Who doesn't get bothered by turning on the news? Who doesn't get bothered by a family member? Thanksgiving's coming up. Start with the low-hanging fruit, he says. Start with those things. And then from there, begin to progress. Once you begin with those things, the practice is the practice. It doesn't care what you're doing it with, right? It is no respecter of size. They always say, in those little snippets that are, cheeky little God things, they always say, like, God can handle anything. It doesn't matter how big or how small. I'm not trying to say that so cheeky, but it is a little cheeky, but it's true, right? It's like Godness doesn't, know between your toe and your cancer, right? Godness is Godness. It is flowing all the time. It is flowing in and through and as each one of us. It's for us to get the practice. It's for us to breathe it in. And it's the same here. Once we get the idea of the practice with the low-hanging fruit and we begin to master practicing the presence, master sitting with our discomfort and inviting in the breath, breathing in. When we begin to master letting go, when something comes to us and it's bothersome, it's worrisome, and we begin to master deciding when it lands in our hands or all over our face or wherever it goes, we decide to just go, oh, well, I'll just put that down. When we decide to engage in that practice, we'll begin to be able to do that with the low-hanging fruit, the little things, and we will be taught how to do that with the big things. The things that we think, I can never forgive them for this. I can never forgive that person for putting me in that environment. I can never forgive that environment for never saving me. I can never forgive you, fill in the blank, whatever it is. I can never forgive this planet for not being perfect. I can never forgive whatever it is. It's not okay. It never will be okay. We will be shown. We will be taught. Start with the low-hanging fruit. As we begin to understand, we begin to realize that it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's something keeping me from divinity. It's something keeping me from peace, keeping me from godness, keeping me from harmony, keeping me from health, keeping me from wholeness, keeping me from light. And then the being within, the observer within, not the ego, not the human self, but the being within, the witness, begins to have more dominion, more space within our beings, and recognizes that it's just not worth it anymore. It doesn't matter if it's a small thing or a large thing. It's not worth not having the flow of life being felt within me. Of course, it's always there. But if I can't feel it, if I can't experience it, that's no longer worth it. And working with the things that come to our awareness quickly, easily, the things that make you growl. I tell my daughter, it's like, when I become a tiger, I tell her that trying to do my work. Oh, Mommy was just a tiger. Sit with it. Breathe. When we begin to notice those things in ourselves and we begin to move the energy, it begins to clear up, it begins to lift up, we begin to feel the flow of life. And the more we have more of that energy, the more that energy flows to us and through all of those blockages. Not because it's not there all of the time, but because it's either like a river that it seems to be going by us, or it is a river flowing through us and filling us up. The choice is ours. Michael Singer goes into the idea of transmuting energy rather than suppressing it or expressing it. So rather than acting on it and lashing out, or rather than pressing it down, which creates depression, he says, work with that energy. That's good energy. Don't suppress it. Use it. And if we're willing to use it, then every time it comes up, we go, yes, thank you. Even if it looks ugly sometimes. And there's a lot of ugly, isn't there, in the world today? I'm going to go into in the last chapter because I do not want to leave that hanging. For anyone that has struggled in the last number of years with how to have a spiritual practice and also stay active socially in the world to create a better world, for humans, for the planet, for life itself, his last chapter is brilliant. So we'll go into that. But the interesting thing is, most people are either awake, either asleep, and don't really realize that this is the work, or really don't want to do it. And we have to ask ourselves, we have to truly ask ourselves, do I want to do this work? I remember one girlfriend a while ago, we were talking about healing work, and we were talking about practices, and she just looked at me and she said, Erin, most people don't want to do this work. And I said, what do you mean? And she, we were probably at Starbucks. And she said something like, people don't want to get rid of their Starbucks. I just found out that a chai latte has like 32 grams of sugar in it or something like that. I've been getting these headaches, and I was like, maybe I should look at the chai latte. I don't have them that often. But I looked at it to see if it had any caffeine and then the sugar. And it's like, we know what to do, don't we? If you've been in Unity or New Thought or any sort of health, whatever it is, you fill in the blank, you know what to do a lot of times for wellness of yourself. We know what to do for wellness on the planet, right? We know how to treat other human beings. We just don't do it, right? And a lot of times we don't do it because we have automatic responses. Either we somehow want to stay awake, or we have been engaging these little routines so much that they have a life of their own. And you feel them pulling you in, dragging you in. I drive by and that chai latte is screaming at me, turn this way, pull me in. Screaming at that person as they're driving by, it's pulling you in. You know they don't need that today. You know they need to be blessed, right? But instead, you bless them with one of your 5 fingers. We know these things, but it's the habits and the routines, and it's staying asleep. And I was surprised when she said most people don't really want to do that work. And I think it's kind of true. We want to push the button and have it be done unto us, right? Just like we want to call the doctor and take the pill, take the medicine, I'll do it, I'll take it, but I don't want to do the underlying work. What? I might have diabetes, I might have a heart condition, I might have high cholesterol. Well, I don't want to stop eating my eggs. I don't even want to slow down. I don't want what goes with it, but I also don't have the commitment to make the choices I'm being guided to make. That goes back to Charles Fillmore, will and understanding. There is a power within us and among us that is so incredibly strong that with a pure heart and pure intent will lift us through those moments into our emancipation, into our freedom, into our healing, into our wholeness. Do you believe that? Have you experienced it? Where you've invited in Source and asked to be supported? Michael Singer says, your will has complete dominion over mind and emotions. Your will has complete dominion over mind and emotions. That is exactly what the Fillmores taught. It's not about suppressing. It's not about acting out. It's about transmuting experience, transmuting energy. We use the issues that come up for us. It doesn't always mean we have to like them. We don't have to have a party when we see them. But we just recognize it. And the more we recognize it, the less willing we'll be to fall into the system. The less willing we'll be to go down the path. The less willing we'll be to recreate the same things over and over and over and blame everyone else, everything else, and anything outside of ourselves for it. There was a good part where he says something like, once you start waking up, you'll be pulled in less frequently and maybe less deeply pulled in to your patterns. And then there's a part of you that might want to go back to your past and start apologizing to people. Not that they didn't do something that you could consider bad or wrong, but that they got to see your pain body, that you got caught up in it, that you hadn't done your work. I like to say on this planet, we grow all over each other. I think that's a commitment we made, soul to soul and heart to heart. If you came down here, you decided it's okay. Let's grow all over each other. And then we give each other the grace to know. And if we have the courage, then we can take responsibility and we can clear it up, clean it up with others. But if we have the practice, we can trust that Spirit is cleaning it up with each person on their own, in their own divine time. Amen. Michael Singer says, you don't find your way back to self, you simply cease to leave. Eventually, you don't find your way back to self, you cease to leave. There were so many things I wanted to read to you today. I'm going to try to find some of them. Everything else just happened. The blocked energies inside are going to build up and need to be released if you don't deal with them. These energies may release in the form of anger, verbal or physical fighting, and other bursts of uncontrolled behavior. When you allow these energies to release unconsciously like this, you're not in charge. That's huge. You're not in charge. Sometimes you think you're in charge, right? We think we're more in charge. We think, oh, I'm releasing this energy. I feel good. That was me. Oh, no. You lost control. I lost control. I wasn't in charge. I didn't have dominion in my own being with my own emotions. I had a blockage, a samskara. I had a mountain of experiences from the moment I was born to now, or maybe beyond being born, and I reacted. He goes on to say, when you allow this to happen, the uncontrolled energy carves channels within you that will make it easier to flow that way again. That's all you got to remember when it happens. Be like, ooh, carving a channel. Gonna be easier next time. If I do it again, I'm carving a channel. It's gonna be easier next time to go this route, the route I don't want to go. The only way to stop carving the channel is to sit with it, to put it down, and to breathe with ourselves. The energy flow becomes a habit. Not only is losing it unhealthy because of what you may say or do outside, but you also increase the probability of losing it that same way again. This can cause all kinds of trouble. Anytime you're not in charge in there, there's going to be trouble. It's that simple. He reminds us to sit with the energy that we're experiencing, to just sit with it and trust. As he said, always remember and trust. The energy wants to go up. You don't have to force it. The energy wants to go up. The blockages want to be removed. The light wants to shine in the darkness. He didn't say all that. He says it's only because people are struggling inside that they are driven to struggle outside. A spiritual being views life as follows. I came down to the planet Earth for a very short time, and these are the experiences I got to have. They were challenging, but I handled them, and I am better off because of them. You don't suppress your issues, and you don't allow them to become a foundation of your life. A past issue is just one of the many things that happened to help you grow. You don't need to know why it happened. He goes on to say, you are the self. You are the conscious witness of all that passes before you. You dwell deep inside, and nothing in there is more powerful than you. I hate to do this to you today, everyone, but I'm going to. The last chapter, the very last chapter, which answers a question for so many of us of how do we show up for the world? Like, how do I show up for the world and how it is? And can I show up with the world and still have an impact and still stand for positive things without being angry, depressed, stuck, raging, whatever it is, right? Anyone else been asking themselves this? How can I show up, right, without all of that? We're going to talk about it next time. It's not an infomercial. We are just out of time, friends. There is so much in here. There is so much in here. So we're going to talk about it next time. So be back for real, because this is what's going to transform the world. And we're ready for it. We're made for it. So let's bring that into a moment of meditation. Just breathing, inhaling and exhaling. Here I am, here I am, here I am. Sweet Spirit, be in me the remembrance of that which resonates with my being, with my soul, the me that is timeless, the me that is the witness, so that I may remember who and whose I am, that I may be what I came here to be. Loosen up within me any of the paradigms that limit creation, that limit me, that limit my life force. Create in me a clean heart. By this I mean, sweet Spirit, in this moment of grace, if you would erase those pathways that have been so well traveled, that I would prefer to heal rather than travel again. If you would soothe and fill in the cracks that have allowed me to express in ways that may have hurt others or myself. I would be honored to cease from picking at them, traveling them again, recreating them. So I inhale and exhale, knowing that there is no size, no limit, no large, no small, as far as what I think can be healed, whether it be in a moment, an instant, or through years of work. There is no size in the mind of God. All Godness is all love. And it is all right on time, flowing in and through and as me, as this moment of my awakening. For that I am so grateful. And I breathe into the silence, into the stillness, into this now moment. By the power of this practice, may all beings have freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know God as love and themselves as emanations of this love. May all beings know we are born blessed and here to be a blessing. Namaste.